but you'll never get away.
Drop it! Buster.
Maxxxine is a 2024 movie of the ongoing pursuits of Maxine Minx, the adult film star of the movie X. She moves to Hollywood to continue her quest to become a movie star, only to be plagued by a series of events. Now, I've mentioned in the past on my Pearl review that Ty West is one of my favorite horror movie directors today, even though most of his movies tend to stop at good or very good for me, with the exception of Pearl, which I thought was great. I just love the fact that he's not some director that made a few short films and then handed the keys to a giant franchise. He's been toiling away in the lower budget side of the genre for over 15 years, and he's been creating movies well above their budget range. Now, I kind of got into it in a little bit more detail in my Pearl review, so I'm not going to repeat that here. But I just want to say he's not just a good horror movie director, he's a good director, utilizing all facets of filmmaking during his movies. That's a craft. And with X and Pearl being two of my favorite movies in 2022, I could not have been more excited about Maxxxine and the closing out of this trilogy. Now, I have to say, after leaving the theater, the word that kept kind of circling around my head was unfocused. That's the best way I think I can describe this movie. It's not bad in any way. Mia Goth playing Maxine is still fantastic and brings a depth to the character that in lesser movies would never rise above surface level. And West still shows that he knows how to make a good movie with practical effects and solid mood and atmosphere. The supporting cast are all solid and quite the cast of heavyweights, actually, from Giancarlo Esposito, Bobby Cannavale, Michelle Monaghan, Elizabeth Debicki, and Kevin Bacon. It's just the story wasn't very tight. In my opinion, Ty West is someone that generally works better when it is a simple or singular story thread. And for the most part, all of his movies, except for maybe In the Valley of Violence, which I feel this movie shares a lot of its minuses with, tend to be about as close to a singular story thread running through it as possible. A babysitter of a mysterious child, hunting a ghost in the final days of a supposed haunted hotel, uncovering the true identity of a cult leader, or just trying to make a porn movie on a farm with a crazy old woman. In Maxxxine, I felt there are just too many things going on that end up diluting the main story rather than strengthening it. Now let me get into the plot a little bit. Maxxxine takes place in 1985, 6 years after the events that transpired in X, where Maxxine was the only survivor of the massacre at the farmhouse by Pearl. She now lives in LA, and she's trying to make the transition from adult movie star into just movie star. But as you can imagine, that's kind of hard. But that doesn't deter her. As with X, we can see that she can be motivated and downright unstoppable at times. She works multiple jobs, from stripper to booth dancer, to pay the rent at an apartment that she has above a small video store, meanwhile shuttling from audition to audition, looking for her big break. This movie opens with her auditioning for her biggest role, a lead in a sequel to the horror movie hit The Puritan. Now, the opening scene of this movie is such a nice example of when this film is firing on all cylinders. From the camera work, to the interactions of the characters, to the performance of Goth as she transitions from Maxine to Veronica she's auditioning as, to the clever way that it recalibrates the stakes here after a show-stopping emotional monologue when the producer then tells her to take her top off. But where that sequence could have felt cheesy and just used for a cheap laugh, the nonplussed way that everyone reacts to the question, including Maxine, ends up working as a clever dig without really winking at the camera while doing it. I mean, this is a tough business, and further proves that Maxine will not be deterred. Thankfully, she's told by her agent, played by Giancarlo Esposito, shortly thereafter that she got the part, and that the director, played by Elizabeth Debicki, fought for her, and so she can't screw this up. So that is the setup. However, with the ongoing murders of the real-life LA serial killer, the Night Stalker, still on the loose, With Satanic panic in full swing, several of her friends become involved in a series of satanic killings. Maxxine trying to deal with an overbearing director for her big shot, while still trying to process the traumatic events on the farm 6 years previous. And a private detective with a mysterious client that threatens to bring all of that up to the surface. There is a lot happening at once, and therein lies what I was talking about with it feeling a little unfocused. It just is too many things taking time away from the main storyline of Maxxine. Now, to be clear, she is involved in all of that, and I could see each storyline could potentially add tension to her story and build upon itself. The problem here is it doesn't, because she never really seems to be affected by any of them. She always manages to navigate her way around them more or less as nuisances rather than roadblocks. She handles each one of them individually instead of them feeling like they're piling up on her and overwhelming her. From a filmmaking 101 standpoint, when characters have to deal with the obstacles in front of them, the drama is created with watching them trying to overcome those obstacles, whether they're real or imagined. The easier they deal with these obstacles, the less drama results. It's one of the reasons why some people I know still won't watch Uncut Gems, because every action he does creates consequences that complicate everything, making for some intense level drama. With this, she seems to best the private eye at every turn. The cops treat her as a victim versus a suspect despite everyone around her dying. Her tough director continues to give her chance after chance, despite her also constantly warning her that she won't get many chances to do this right. Her agent, who also happens to be her lawyer and muscle, provides reliable support whenever she needs it. It all just feels a little too easy at times. I wanted to feel her desperation and her struggle. Instead, the movie teases that all of this is going to come to a head, but instead the whole thing kind of culminates into a third act that feels a little weak. It's just kind of underwhelming in both idea and execution. Now, I'm not going to get into too many spoilers here, but I do have one kind of spoiler question that I'm going to throw out. So if you want to avoid this, I would say skip to the end here. Now, throughout the movie, they hide the identity of the true killer. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure why. I thought it was fairly obvious who it was given how the movie was set up and the prologue, so I didn't get why the hiding of the killer throughout this movie was so important. By not showing the killer, it seemed to hint that we would somehow know who he is when it's revealed, but although we know of the killer, we don't know what the killer looks like, so why not show his face from the start? I can only guess because they want to do some kind of a misdirect with the actual Night Stalker, and I'm assuming that they were trying to make it look like it was the Night Stalker the whole time, but it's just the whole thing doesn't come out great and adds to the underwhelming ending. Now, just to wrap this up, once again, Ty West is steady behind the camera, and the craft here is great. This is a seasoned veteran, and what I love about him in general is there is a steadiness to his work and an earnestness that bleeds through. His insistence on practical effects, as it has plenty of gore to go around, and adhering to equipment that was available at the time, it really gives a look and feel of a movie of that era without being over the top like an 80s bomb went off. Mia Goth is always 100% and shines in the title character once again, but the movie does feel like it meanders a bit too much from the core story and then presents an ending that never really ties it all together in a satisfying way. Overall, I feel like this movie falls into a few of the trilogy traps of years past, like the original Star Wars trilogy or Aliens trilogy or Dark Knight trilogy, where you have a very good first film, a great second film, and then just a good third film. Small asterisk of that, because I would probably argue that Aliens is just as great as Alien, but that's a topic for another day. I would give this movie a B-, but let me know what you think.